to mind when I put green honey harvesting. Um, I caused some confusion, and I have to shamelessly admit that that was intended. Um, so first and foremost, a big shout out to Denise, not only for the original invitation to join the webinar, but when we talked about topics that were up and coming, it was really, she said, run with it. So I did. And aside from a false start in the summer, in great patience on her part, I took something that I wanted to be a little quizzical. It was meant to be a metaphor for other things. And so we'll get both practical, but I hope at the end of this that this is going to be seen as basically I'm trying to spur a little conversation, a little thought. We have a diverse audience here, and I appreciate that, from novice beekeepers to sideliners to some pros, and trying to give a little bit of something to everyone can be challenging. So at the end, if you come along with this ride, I'm hoping that I'm going to talk a little bit about green honey, ripe honey, harvesting, energy, but I want to end talking a little bit about innovation in the future. We have a lot of issues out there. We have a lot of bees dying. We had a lot of beekeepers aging. And on a positive note, just because my optimism demands that I go in that direction, there are a lot of good things happening. There's been a resurgence in interest in beekeeping. So from the novices in the field to support that's coming back, I'll talk a little bit at the end about I think that are happening. But
Alex, I'm sorry to jump in. This is Denise. You're coming in just a little, in and out just a little bit, so a little more projection, maybe just a touch closer to the mic will help us. Thank you.
Jump in again if that's not working.
Yep, we'll do.
So let me, again, just a brief a shout out, if I can, before we get into this, and that is to Miami University. I do my work out at the Ecology Research Center. They're incredibly supportive with the public observation apiary that we've set up, as well as the many other little programs that we got going on. At the end of the day, it really is people who make the difference. So these are good people out there. I want to specifically mention Ann Ripstra and Rodney Coleman, both the director and the manager of the station, and a part-time supporters and inventors extraordinaire. They've been amazingly helpful. A shameless little plug that somebody else put together. We'll get over this one right away. The public observation apiary is down in the far lower left. Come out and see us sometime. We're doing some interesting work out there. We'd love to have you. Okay, the journey. Green honey harvesting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about, I think, things that people expected, and that is that there are literally green honeys out there, and what that means, where they come from. But a big concern in the honey industry, probably one of the metrics that people have to rely on, is whether honey is ripe enough, its moisture content. We'll get into that a little bit. And then when it comes to the harvesting, that there are all kinds of tips, tricks that beekeepers can use and have been using. And because of that new crowd of beekeepers that's coming in these days, they're bringing and coming from different fields. They're looking at the way things were done in the past, and they're bringing some new innovations and some ideas to the field. I'm going to throw a couple of those out. I'm hoping that I can even tickle a couple of the seasoned beekeepers with things that make you go, so we'll jump into that. But now I had an issue here. Bear with me for a second. Better. Back to honey properties. I'm going to talk a little bit about color, hence green, crystallization. Beekeepers are pretty familiar with this insidious little problem. viscosity, interestingly enough, and moisture. One of those words that just kind of crawls out of the woodwork under the term hygroscopic or water content. But let's jump into it just for fun. For those of you in the know, you might be surprised, but there are well over 300 recognized honey brands in the United States. And we often, when we run biology labs here, it's fun, we do a honey tasting. And it's fascinating to see those 18 to 22-year-olds have absolutely no clue. Honey is a generic term. You go to the Kroger store around here, and you buy honey. You don't think of honeys. And occasionally you might go out on a limb and get clover honey or something like that. But most of us have this kind of blended for color for the consumer. And if I'm speaking to beekeepers out there, they know the value of a local varietal. It's just a totally different experience in terms of color, taste. But just in the know, there is just this incredible variety, and in particular in Ohio, we even scale it back at fairs to a light, an amber, and a dark honey. And this is my shout out for those of you, if you haven't experimented on the lighter and the darker side, do yourself a favor and not only support local beekeeping, but try these varietals. You'll get a kick out of them. But what happens if we go from the expected light to dark browns to something that's literally green? Are there green honeys out there? So I wanted to be truth in advertising, green honey harvesting. So it turns out that there actually are. I remember as a young beekeeper in Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, we had a thistle flow one fall where we had picked up some very light green honey, and it was fascinating in color, texture, taste. You don't see it often on the shelves. We don't have products that bring it in, but as most beekeepers know, the color actually stems from the flora that the bees are gathering, not the bees, which is interesting, a common misnomer. Students all the time are asking me, is it the bees? Different colored bees make different colored honey. We know that's not true, but it's not as ridiculous as it sounds. But what happens if we in fact step outside our normal experience and we get to something like this? This actually happened. It's happened twice in my life. This was an interesting little experiment that came down from the M&M company, a beekeeper in a nearby area. Their bees got into some of the colored sugar flavoring that M&M's uses for their M&M's, and lo and behold, green honey. I had an individual approach me as a test in the middle of a session, raised their hand and said, I want you to identify this, and they brought up some green honey for me, and I couldn't. I thought it was a gag. I thought they were twisting my arm. It turns out, long story short, that he lived near a snow cone factory, and they were using colored sugars and flavors for producing the various snow cones. And as you can see from this shot, they're just a variety of interesting colors, which reinforces the idea in an interesting way of how and where our bees get their nectar from and how honey is produced. So I thought, as my spin on green honey harvesting, that would at least be kind of a tickle and interesting for people out there. Strange and unusual things. But to the point of real beekeeping, it's the green or unripe honey that really concerns us. And that essentially means that there's too much moisture in it. As I said, honey, it has interesting properties. If you think about a typical day in Ohio here, with the sun shining, we're at a moisture or humidity content 40, 50, 60%. Well, honey on average is running about 17 to 20-ish%. So you can get green honey or unripe honey in this case if there are various floral types, the concentrations of sugars to moisture, and what the bees are doing with them at different times of the year. When the flow is on early in the spring, early summer, the bees are just packing it in, and therefore it's tempting to do some early extracting, and that's a prime example where you can pick up not completely ripened honey. The bees literally, as a reminder out there, they don't gather honey, they gather nectar. Then they use this wonderful enzyme factory that they have in them to produce a honey product. And then it has to be dehydrated, essentially, down from nearly 100% down to that 17 to 22%. So we can do that through hasty harvesting. And another one is that because it's hygroscopic, it's only about 17 to 22% moisture. If you literally leave a bucket or a pail of honey sitting out in the room, it will literally absorb the moisture out of the air. So these are some examples of what does happen. Good thing, bad thing. What happens when you put sugar, yeast, and water and temperature in the same place? For those connoisseurs out there, meads or honey wines. So thank you, beekeepers, way back for bringing that to us. But if you're a beekeeper trying to store and put up bulk honey, this can be a bad thing. Literally creating honey mead in your pails. The pails will explode. Barrels have been known, 50-gallon barrels have been known to explode. And you can ruin a very expensive crop quickly if it's stored improperly or harvested improperly. So this is a very serious issue for beekeepers, so much so that we test for it all the time. A classic way of testing for this would be the shake method. You develop an intuition for this after a while. Most beekeepers can basically, in the field, grab a hold of a frame, as I did here, and I literally put a piece of paper down. This is from literally earlier this spring out at the ERC, and I just shook the frame, and this was the result. Now, ripened honey won't do this, and it doesn't take long to develop a little bit of an intuition on what you can and what you can't get away with. But we can take it one step further. You can't rely on the shake method all the time, so we introduced something called a refractometer. It's a standard instrument used in beekeeping. I put the prism up there. Most of us are familiar with the fact that light will bend through a refracting lens depending on the spectrum of the light at different angles. And in this particular case, all we do is we take a little dollop of honey on the refractometer, look to a light source, and just like that, we're able to read. In this particular case, if you look closely, you'll see that this honey sample that we took was between 17 and 18%, almost just dead on where we're looking for it. But that's how important this is. You literally must examine your honeys if you're going to put them up for storage. Most of us are familiar with the fact that honeys don't rot, they don't spoil, but they can ferment. And so paying close attention to the ripeness or the moisture content of honey can be, is crucial in operations. How can we avoid this? Well, aside from checking for it, be careful. Things visually, you'll see frames of honey on the upper left and the upper right. When the honeys are coming in like they are in the spring, you get these big, beautiful, fully extruded frames of comb, and it's sometimes tempting to grab some of these that are half capped and just get on with it, or they find their way in a box. The middles are capped, but the outsides aren't completely capped, and they, in your haste to extract everything, they make it into your operation, and voila, you have extra moisture, which begins the fermentation process. On the upper right, you can see this is from the fall. An experienced beekeeper will see that there wasn't enough of a nectar flow, a honey run, and so the cones aren't completely filled out. They are capped, but not quite capped, and that's what can make it interesting. Both of these aren't completely capped, but the one in the upper right is generally much safer. What honey is there just wasn't capped because we're getting late in the season. The honey has been ripened, but they'll only make wax at certain temperatures and certain times. And so being seasonally aware you're more likely to make a mistake in the spring, summer than you are in the fall. But what happens if you extract that honey and you test it with a refractometer and you have a high moisture content, say 22, 23%? Can I do anything? Or am I literally bound by my mistakes? Not so much. Beekeepers are an ingenious lot, and it turns out from using heat tape, things that we used to use in northern Wisconsin to keep the ice off the ridges of the house has now been adapted. You wrap a heat tape around your tanks, and you gently warm them, and as you would expect, that's going to heat the honey to remove the moisture without destroying the honey, or its taste and its fine qualities, which we'll get into later. The other thing is about storage. Make sure you have tight lids and seals, and temperature, but that'll get into crystallization. But just a little test and a warning for a lot of people. If you're buying honey or bulk honey from a local beekeeper, you're expanding your operation, test it. Refractometers are easy to get a hold of these days. If you're an experienced beekeeper, you can probably put some in a jar and do the bubble test by rolling it up and down and seeing how quickly that bubble moves up and down through viscosity. But the key is test it. Don't just incorporate it into your operation without looking at the overall quality of what's going on there. I mentioned some of the other properties that I wanted to get into in the green honey scheme, and again, probably one of the big ones is granulation. Most of you have been there. It saddens me to hear that people throw away honey after it's been granulated. They think that it's somehow, like so many other condiments, are treated like condiments, that it has gone bad and there's nothing you can do about it, and that's not quite the case. It's the very nature of honey that will cause all honeys to granulate. So it's a fascinating product. If you wish, I've got this. Some people call it a liquid crystal. Technically, it's a super saturated fluid. Basically, it literally has more. It's like mixing salt or sugar in a water solution. You literally have more than normal chemistry allows you to contain per unit volume. So it has some very unique properties to that. The other one, all you have to do is heat honey. Most of us are familiar with that. You'll put it in a microwave. Be careful. You'll put it in a hot pot on top of the oven or stove. Be careful. All of these will bring or reconstitute your honey, but if you add too much heat, you'll destroy some of those delicate properties that honey is really noted for. And so just a little shout out there. There's a lot of other things going on in honey besides sugar to give it its unique properties. One of them that I pick on is hydrogen peroxide. That's why honey is very acidic. It has lots of interesting, even healing powers. It's been, the world is starting to recognize it. This spring, I finally got a chance to see that they're using honeys in brand products in nursing homes for bed sores and wounds. Other countries have recognized this for quite a while. The United States has been a little slow to the draw on this one, but there are a lot of interesting properties to honey, and my takeaway here is that it's heat and time. That's the key. Even if you let honey sit in a nice room and it won't crystallize, it'll slowly darken over time. A year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, you're actually adding heat to it. We just don't, through common experience, think that room temperature is heat, but it is. You don't have to hit it with 120 or 140 degrees to really visually darken it. It's just room temperature is going to darken honey over time. So it's heat over time. And back to the stove or the microwave, gently heat your honeys, and you'll not only reconstitute that product, but you'll have the product that you bought and paid for. But how can we use that? So heat reconstitutes honey. One of the claims I made here was that I actually love doing this. This picture is from my car. I did it as a little bit of a gaffe, but I think most beekeepers discovered this kind of serendipitously. You don't think about it. You've got some honey that's crystallizing. You threw it in a box in the back of your car, and your car got stuck at that large parking lot in the afternoon shopping, and you come back several hours later, and lo and behold, your honey was reconstituted again. Well, here was a classic example where you can deliberately go out of your way to do this. Now, obviously, if you're a sideliner or a larger beekeeper, you might find yourself in trouble unless you make agreement with all the neighbors down the street to fill their cars with your bulk honey. But on a small scale, you can literally do things like, look at the dial. If you look to the left, you're going to see that the outside temperature the car is measuring is 90 degrees that day. Look at the inside temperature down in the center. It's 131. That's an amazing difference. Now, we all know that. We step into those dark cars, and we haven't solved that problem yet. But you can use that to your advantage. Take a look at the bears here. This was only after about 2 hours, I believe. We went from nearly crystallized bears on the left to somewhat liquefied bears on the right. Within 3 to 4 hours at 130 plus degrees in these small containers, you're going to bring them back. Interestingly enough, I did the same thing with wax. Wax will get a bloom on it over time, and it can be a pain to either wipe them down or pull them out of packages that you already have. A little tip, a trick out there. You can even leave them in their same cellophane packs or whatever. And this picture doesn't really dramatize it, but the one on the upper left had a full bloom on it. The one on the right is after about an hour of sitting in that same car. And they literally come back glossy, unbloomed. This is an example of using what I called green heat or green honey harvesting theme to literally take advantage of the kind of things that are around you. You can take this to the next level, and I recommend not putting honey, by the way, on the dash of your car. Let's just say one of those bears fell over and leaked. You know where that story went. So taking this to the next level, though, instead of using electric or water-jacketed heaters or things like that, beekeepers have been amazingly inventive and ingenious about using the sun to create their own heaters. You can create a heat box. Lots of plans out there, esource.com, lots of free plans out on the internet. The long story short here is that it's a great way of melting your cappings. It's a great way of reconstituting your honeys. And using, if we're going to push the metaphor of green, you're using free energy from the sun. And it's just there are just so many ways. If you have darker wax, you can use the same sunlight as a bleaching agent to bring some of that back. As an example, to push that further, another product that's really becoming popular for a lot of hobbyist beekeepers is collecting pollen. So the bees are going out, and this is their protein of choice. And aside from nectar, they're bringing back pollen. And in the upper left, we have a standard. I think this is a Sundance pollen trap. And depending on the time of the year, you can literally trap the pollens that they're bringing in. But it too has interesting properties. When they bring it in, it's a combination of pollen mixed with nectar. And it has a relatively high moisture content. If you just put it in a bag and try to store it or a jar, it'll quickly mold on you. So one of the first things you have to do is dry it out. And in this particular case, you're removing, I've stuck a number in there arbitrarily, but not, about 16% of the moisture you've got to take out of there. so that it has, for a lot of naturalists that are taking this as a supplement, both a protein or a vitamin supplement, you're looking for it not to be dry, Rice Krispie dry, to have a little bit of moisture in it. Again, something you can play with. But the standard methods have been, you can see in the upper right, you can put it in the oven, but you've got to be careful. It's not that heat is hard to modify. You can quickly bake it and end up with these interesting kind of pollen patties that you weren't planning on it. But a really interesting method using heat from the sun is to put it on a cookie sheet down in the center. This is literally a couple of pollen traps, and if you lay them out in the sun within a typical sunny day, we're talking in the 80s, mid-80s plus, you can walk by occasionally and keep testing it. It's almost an analog approach until you get just that consistency that you're looking for. But within 3 to 5 hours, using no other energy than the free solar out there, you can have a finely controlled, in-tune product, which then can be frozen, vacuum sealed, whatever. But a lot of interesting play on the green heat. I threw the one in the far right just in for fun. This is the things you can do, things that make you go, I've seen beekeepers literally turn old popcorn poppers, air popcorn dryers, into cleaners. I'm throwing that out there just as something that you may want to experiment with. Once you've dried the pollen, it now has to be cleaned. There's lots of little debris. You have little bee bits. You have other, there can be insect, other things that are in there, dried now, of course. And so you have to use some vehicle to clean that pollen. And counting them out one by one with a pair of tweezers is not the way to go. So beekeepers, again, have found lots of inventive ways to play with this. Ask me about that later if you want some tips on some pollen cleaners. It's amazing how inquisitive beekeepers can be. On the other side, when we talk about green, it doesn't have to be hot green. It can be cold. In this particular case, I did this as an experiment this past winter. We always talk about one of the fascinating properties of bees is that even in the coldest of winter, that brood nest, for a lot of reasons, is around 91, 92 degrees. Proof, if I had this magnified, you could actually see that was true. But there are things that you can do in the cold. Just as a slight gaffe, Thanksgiving's coming up, people are going to be visiting. Do yourself a favor. In the upper right, put a honey bear in the freezer for an hour or a day. Let it literally, quote, freeze, unquote. You can see from a little bit of the physical properties that are here, honey has some interesting viscosity and other properties that might surprise you. That one's a crowd pleaser. You will be the hit of the parade for the family. Give it a shot. So when I talk about cold for me, one of the things that's interesting in green harvesting, it's about timing. If you wait for it to be cold, it's amazing how much easier your work can become. It's kind of like I've got a neighbor who he waits for it to rain, and then he does his trimming along the driveway because now the ground is supple and soft, and it makes it just that much easier than doing it when it's dry. Well, beekeepers kind of key off of this as well, and it turns out that some of the hive products that we work with, propolis, that kind of bee glue, or resin that they use to plug holes, is very sensitive to temperature and becomes brittle when it's cold. Wax, the same way. I remember when I was young, somebody had given me a box of wax foundation, and I wasn't paying attention. I grabbed it and I kind of heaved it into the back of the car. And the old fellow who sold it to me said, "Well, would you like to buy another one?" And I said, "Why is that?" And he walked over to the box that he opened up, and showed that I now had a box of wax flakes inside instead of a box of wax foundation. And it didn't take, I think it was Benjamin Franklin said, those things that hurt instruct. Well, we've now taken that same idea, and if you're cleaning up your equipment for the winter, it's amazing with a hive tool if you're trying to either harvest or clean propolis or clean out frames of wax. It's amazing how much easier that is in the wintertime when it's cold. So you can actually use that to your advantage. If you're moving honeybees, they can be a problem in the heat, but let those cold mornings come on where you can then put a reducer or a screen over the front entrance, and the bees have now kind of formed a marginal cluster. It just, moving bees becomes very easy in the cold. Other things that we use. If you find some equipment that literally a weakened hive, a near dead out, and wax moths have taken over, it can be, aside from a little deflating, but you can save that equipment if you have a big enough freezer back to the cold, and you literally put those supers or brood chambers in the freezer for a day. It will literally kill the current wax moths and the larvae and eggs that have been laid, and you can save that equipment. So again, reasons that you can use cold. So you can use free cold or manufactured cold, but I wanted to play off the side of that. Back to a point to you beekeepers out there, interesting, comb honey is becoming a big thing again. The Europeans love to eat their comb honey. It's kind of an origination. You see the source. It hasn't been, you can tell it hasn't been filtered or heated, so you're going right back to the source, and this is becoming very popular around the United States again. So one of the things you want to do if you're putting it in cassettes or you're putting it in honey, and I highly recommend this, is take that box of comb honey and put it in the freezer or those frames prior to cutting them up and putting them into some kind of a container. It can be rather distressing to find a customer or friend or family member looking at your cassette of comb honey only to find a waxworm or something wiggling out, because our hives are out there. There are lots of organisms that are in and around them. We don't like to talk about them. But one of the things you can do is you can sterilize your equipment and your honey by using cold as an approach. As I said, on the bottom, let your freezer be your friend. But back to green. When I was first playing with this idea, it started going in so many directions it actually surprised me. One of them was time, saving energy. This is green as far as I'm concerned, that you're literally looking at how you're doing your beekeeping so that you're either not injuring yourself or you're saving time and energy. And there are just lots of little tiny examples once we get past the obvious unripe honey and physically green honey on things that can be done. And as I indicate here, there's a lot of overlap in these, so bear with me. I'm sure you'll come up with ideas that I hadn't, but just a brief view. Saving time. I always tell beekeepers when they're about to go into a hive, why are you there? The metaphor is that you're a doctor, you're looking at a patient, and that you should know why you're in the room. Keep your senses open, but why are you there? And so chances are, we do fire drills here down at the ERC at our monthly meetings where we try to break hives down in literally 2 to 5 minutes because we know what we're looking for at that time of year. So if you go in with a plan, it's amazing how much time you'll save yourself. One of the other big things about this is this is one I harp on, and it's understanding more about bees, more about general beekeeping practices, the flora in your area, the weather in your area, and what I call the beekeeper's year. If you know when you are where you are, this will make a big difference in your practices and how you're going to time things, when you need to be aware of things. The wax moths don't come on until midsummer. so you don't have to be looking for them early. But you better be checking for them late by putting in paramoth crystals or something in your stored equipment, or you're going to lose that equipment eventually. So a lot of this has to do with common sense stuff, and I won't go through the details. But beekeeping is like so many other activities. If you're planning ahead, and you often can use these proverbial ounces of prevention instead of pounds of cure. Feeding before your bees are starving out, treating before mites have overtaken your colony, and then maintaining your equipment before it goes bad. And that, whether it's physical maintenance through painting or storage from mice and as I mentioned, wax moths, just thinking about these things in terms of saving time, and in a lot of these cases, a lot of money as well. When you lose equipment, it not only can be, personally dissatisfying, but it can be very expensive to try to take advantage of these. Energy is one of mine, and this is both physical energy and human energy. Beekeepers are amazing about this. If you're a onesie-twosie beekeeper, you can do just about anything. You use this kind of hammer and nail and sledgehammer approach. But as you scale up, you're going to find out that beekeepers have found ways. And a classic example on the left is, nailing a frame by hand. A classic example on the right is we've literally gone to jigs that you can literally put 10 frames together in about the same amount of time and energy that you could putting one together. And if I can, and I know you're following along reading this, one of them I just want to get on to is the beekeepers themselves. There's that old adage out there are two kinds of beekeepers, those with bad backs and those about to get bad backs. This is mechanical efficiencies. There's just a lot of ways to move this bulk equipment around without hurting yourself. Follow some of the mentors in your area. The best way of learning is get to a honey house, if you can, where somebody's scaling up. You'll find out that they're not just heaving and hoeing. They're literally using lots of interesting little mechanical advantages, from dollies to lifts to whatnot. And as you think about scaling around, even though you may not be playing in that arena, there are a lot of little tips that you can use to help you and to stay not hurt and enjoy your experience. So just keep that in mind in terms of overall efficiencies. I've kind of hinted on this again, saving money. It's an attractor for people, obviously, but some of the areas that, and believe it or not, this goes under my idea of green, saving greenbacks, I guess. But the idea is know when to be in your colony, know when not to be there. That savings of time for a lot of beekeepers as you scale up actually there is a time money element, and you have to be aware of that. Things that people aren't thinking about is we're heading into the end of the year, buying annually. Prices are going to increase 2014. Bees are going to increase. Make sure you get your orders in early. Make sure that you get them in before the change of the year. It'll make a big difference on the cost of some of that equipment. Bee schools can be great. There's an Ohio State Beekeepers Association meeting coming up in November on the 2nd. This is a shameless plug. But vendors show up, and oftentimes they will not charge you for shipping and or taxes, or they will be reduced. And this is a great way to save some green scratch. One of the big ones that I want to hit on is bees are just becoming so expensive today. It's really impingent upon beekeepers to really get on their game. They cost you a lot of money through loss. And so, my hint to beekeepers out there more and more is we don't have to do so many more things, but it's the timing in the doing of those things that becomes more and more important. And you start paying upwards of $95 to $125 for a package or a nuke of bees, it starts to become a serious investment. So simply keeping that investment alive can really pay off. And one of the other last but not least is for in associations. There are a lot of beekeeping associations out there and clubs. And more, they've done a great job at providing materials to new beekeepers. It's a little expensive to buy that first extractor. It's a little expensive to buy an uncapping tank or extracting knife or a whole host of other things that go with this. Associations are playing a really big role, I think, in trying to help the novices move along and reduce some of those costs. Strangely enough, scalability. You don't think about this in terms of green, but interestingly enough, the old adage is you want to have at least 2 hives or 2.5 hives, that being a nuke with your 2 hives. And you'll find out yourself that, like many things that we do, it's actually cheaper, faster to do 2 things or multiples of things than it is to do 1. So if you're going to extract 1 super of honey, it's not that much more effort to extract 5 or 10. Now there are scalability issues there. You start extracting 40 or 50, you start extracting 100, you start extracting 500. That's a whole new ball game. But there are, aside from the plateaus in there are points in there that you can really find efficiency that plays onto your favor. One of the things that, and when I say that, I want to be very careful here. I keep reminding, especially new beekeepers, that you have every bit the opportunity to be the beekeeper that the, quote, big guys are. And that is that the big guys are literally running and gunning. They have so many colonies that they literally have to do I've said prophylactic. Whatever they're doing, they have to do it in all kinds of weather. You can choose yours. They have to literally treat and not treat. They have to do things at scale where you, the smaller beekeeper, you really have the opportunity to invest in that colony. You can do individual hive manipulations and experiments. You can take your time and you can really enjoy the art, the craft of beekeeping. And so there's a misnomer out there that that not only is bigger better, but that in order to be a serious beekeeper, I've got to literally count in the tens or the hundreds, and I argue clearly that that's not the case. And I hope a lot of beekeepers take comfort in that. Probably coming to the end on the green theme is that sustainability. They're almost synonymous words in today's vernacular, but I want to remind beekeepers that there's an interesting phenomenon out there, even in the bee world, and that is somehow our bees are becoming disposable. We expect a certain die-off, and then we just replace them. And I think now, for a while, we've been investing in replacement bees more so than we've been looking at solutions to the cost of those bees. I mean, after all, if you're a bee producer, you're not heavily invested in getting out of the bee producer business. And not that they've conspired to have sick bees or dying bees, but their interest and their motivation is to literally keep producing packages and nukes. And I think that my shout out here is that we need to be looking at other green things in terms of sustainability. I want to be careful that this could include anything from the chemicals we use on them. Some are much more toxic than others. And we've got a lot of beekeepers that are interested in going green, literally letting the bees that are susceptible die off, and to the strongest go to spoils. So if you lose 35 to 45% of your bees this year, the argument is you're going to have a hardier stock by not introducing any pest management treatments or techniques. I tend to disagree with that. The analogy would be if your child really needs that antibiotic, by all means give it to them. Don't just hope they get through it, and to the survivors we go. We've got to find some measured approach in there, and I think we are getting there. But on a more interesting note for me, this little equation I have at the bottom, food equals pollination equals bees. For me, that's more what I mean by sustainable. I think we need more bees, and I think we need better bees. And I'm hoping that the ears that are listening, we're going to take this viral, if you will, and that's really the message that we just can't deny out there. This is the message of the day, and so just a little shout away. And before I leave sustainability, when I talk about sustaining bees and beekeeping, I also interesting talk about sustaining beekeepers. It turns out that, as I said in the beginning, not only are we losing a lot of bees, the North American continent saw nearly 50% loss coming out of 2012 into 2013. This is extraordinary. But at the same time, for a while now, we've been losing beekeepers. There's a frustration with the additional challenges of bee losses and the expense. But it's just something also that as a culture we've been stepping away from, and I'm encouraging. We're starting a new program here where we're doing a youth outreach where we're trying to literally get into schools and get into the future farmers and the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, and other educational groups to try to hook, if you will, new young beekeepers and kind of repopulate our craft, because it sounds kind of silly when you say it, but it doesn't do us a lot of good to save the bees if we don't save the beekeepers as well, not at the way we pollinate crops and so forth. So I want to quickly, because of timing, wrap this up, but there is hope out there. If you look at this little map of Ohio, these are some of the associations I talked about. If you're a novice beekeeper out there, look around your area. If you're in Ohio and see that many other states follow a similar format, there's a lot of interest out there. There just is a tremendous amount of interest out there, and I would encourage you to take advantage of the bee schools that are being sponsored. Again, I'm not just trying to pick on Ohio, but through the OSBA conferences, to the Tri-County meeting that we have in the spring and the SWOBA meeting. These are fantastic breakout sessions with great lectures and topics. There's a lot of information out there. And you can do yourself a real favor by taking advantage of that. I was going to hit this one in terms of some last-minute tips and tricks, but these basically, all of these could be wrapped up under the guise of, when I say green, there are just so many time and energy-saving things out there that the closer you step to seasoned beekeepers, they literally are, again, things that make you go, You can read through the kind of laundry list that I have here. And you can't exhaust this. Probably the takeaway is at the bottom. The beekeeper's motto is to improvise, synthesize, or do without. And they're not good at doing without. So it is amazing what they'll do with equipment and how many tips and tricks have been learned over the years to literally save all this time and energy. Any one of these, again, I believe beekeeping is best done through a mentorship. We do that with the Butler County beekeepers down here, where every month we literally meet in the bee yard. We do actual beekeeping. I think it's a takeoff of that old Chinese adage that, tell me, I'll probably forget. Show me, I might forget, but let me do, and surely I will remember. And so beekeeping is very much that way. It's something that we do, we practice. And it's all the little things, from holding a hive tool and using it effectively, taking and stacking boxes and to make it easier to move and manipulate them. These are just lots and lots of little tips and tricks, but you've got to go into that. You have to, when I said green before, you have to go in with that mindset that, kind of keep your eyes open and look for the little tips and tricks that are going to save you all that time and energy and in many cases keep you from hurting yourself. And I kind of end on a good example that I think has been taken over lately. I'm hoping I'm going to catch some of the seasoned beekeepers on this one. This was actually, I first gleaned out of it from a fellow from England, and when I introduced it into the area, nobody had seen it this spring for honey harvesting, and that was using a heat gun, of all things, to uncap your honey. Instead of using a hand uncapping knife or an electric knife, etc., what you literally used was a standard heat gun. It heats with a blower in it, and by gently wanding it over the frame, you're melting that the cappings. And long story short, when you're done doing that, you've uncapped, because the wax pulls back as it's heated, you've uncapped these frames. You have almost no mess and fuss whatsoever with cappings that are left over. Now, for those candle makers out there, this is not probably your best approach. But if you're just a small-time beekeeper and you're not interested in the wax cappings per se, and you want to minimize all the mess and the use of an uncapping knife, this is just one of those classic little ingenious ideas that kind of came out of nowhere. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And interestingly enough, on a poll down here of new beekeepers trying a hand uncapping knife versus an electric uncapping knife versus this heat gun uncapping knife, we have literally about 75% of new small beekeepers want to use this uncapping as their method of choice. So something new in the neighborhood. In closing, I just want to make some final remarks about my motivation for green was, again, if I can, it wasn't really about green honey, and it wasn't about trying to fool you with M&M honey. It was, I just wanted to run with the concept and kind of spur some inspirational or motivational ideas. Beekeeping, for me, for a while, it feels like we've been somewhat stagnant. And if we look back, though, there have been these little incremental changes that have been happening. And I think we're at one of those thresholds where we're either about to see some truly, not evolutionary, but revolutionary change to the beekeeping industry that's brought about literally by the pressures. We cannot continue to lose 50% of our bees and our bees. But there are things as we enter a new era of queen breeding and genetics, as we look at some of the devices, all these new beekeepers that are funneling into our craft are coming from these various fields, and it's just stunning to see what they bring to our world with a new. So I really want to just leave it on a positive note by suggesting that there is this wonderful resurgence in beekeeping today. I can feel it. I've been at this for a couple of decades now. And I think that's, for a while there, it's become tempting to play the doom and gloom card. But there are just such an array of people who are showing up at the bee schools. The numbers are greater than ever that are showing up at the meetings and the associations. The numbers are growing and bigger than ever. And some of the equipment that's coming. So to my green theme here, I see that there are a lot of people who are going to, like the heat gun, like so many of the other tips and tricks that are out there. I think that we're going to see a real, as I'm going to abuse the term again, resurgence and interest in not only generalized beekeeping, but so many interesting new practices that are going to come along. It's just going to make the field more fascinating for all of us. So on that note, questions? Anybody?
Great, Alex. Thanks so much for a really interesting, lively presentation. I think a couple folks are putting some questions in. I wondered, Alex, if you could spend just a minute on, you mentioned you did fire drills there in your apiary. Can you talk about what that is?
Sure. The common excuse out there is that we do it, all of us do it. I don't have time. We want to get to that colony, but I don't have time. I'm in my good clothes. I only have this and that. Fire drills really are an example of, it's a mindset. You go into a colony knowing that at that time of year, what are you looking for? Am I looking to see if I have queen right if I have enough brood, is the engine of the colony working fine? Am I looking for a disease? Am I looking for a pest? Am I looking that I need to put supers on? Am I looking to extract? So given the time of year in that interesting beekeeper cycle, you walk in with a kind of a preordained vision of what you want to accomplish. So it's not just tabula rasa, just whatever. So with that in mind, you walk literally into the colony with, I'm looking for this. This is my goal. This is what I want to find. This is what I need to see. And when you're prepared to do that, you don't have to find it. You just have to find all the things. You can readily see if they're literally in need of supering to reduce swarming, or that it's time to take honey off, or there's that telltale sign of disease, mite loads, something. So with that in mind, you can literally break a hive down, and we literally try to do it. Give yourself 2 minutes. Give yourself 5 minutes. Take the tops off. Break those boxes down. If you need to get all the way to the brood chamber, get there. Don't just kind of waltz around. Literally get pointed in what you're looking for. You can literally, again, the adage here is you can get in and out of the colony in 2 to 5 minutes and find everything you need to find to move that colony on. So the excuse that they don't have to.
Lost you just a bit there at the end, Alex. Joe had a question about cross stacking of bee boxes. What you mean by that?
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. This will save you, for those out there, this will save many a rotator cuff and torn muscles and ligaments. When you take boxes off, again, if you're going to do that stack approach, you flip the hive top over. You literally then start laying the boxes not square with one another, where the propolis underneath can re-glue in the heat. And every time you try to lift that weight, you're literally pulling against both dead weight, gravity, and the bee glue. And when you're not prepared for that, you can literally injure yourself. Besides the injury, if you literally turn those boxes 90 degrees and you lay them so you only have the 4 points touching each other, when you go to pick them back up again, you're not having to unglue them. And so it really makes life a lot easier and a lot faster.
Okay, thanks, Alex. There's another quick question about the heat gun and what happens to the wax. Doesn't it melt down the frame when you use that method to uncap?
You know, it actually doesn't. You would think so, but it really doesn't. Because of the nature of wax, what it does is it draws back on itself. It shrinks. And most of us kind of have experienced that. If you try making candles or whatnot, you'll fill a candle mold to the top, and you come back in a minute or 3 later, and you'll see how much it has shrunk. And you literally have to refill that mold. Otherwise, you end up with a not so nice candle and so forth. So from that common experience, when you wand, and you'll develop an intuition on how fast and how close you can use the heat, the wax, kind of like shrink wrap, the wax kind of pulls back on itself and leaves itself open and exposed. For those interested in that, I do recommend that you have a cap scratcher. Those in the know will know what I'm talking about, so that you can just kind of, sometimes you'll get a little wax film that'll form back over the cells. But if you just use a cap scratcher and lightly scratch it, you'll be fine.
Super. Thanks, Alex. We're just about